Hey, hey, hey. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. Listen, I am so glad y'all here. It has been just a fantastic week. Wednesday night, my mom came to visit me in my dream, and she's been gone now for 12 years. And she's only come to visit me three times in my dream. But this time, she didn't have anything specific to say or to share. It was just the two of us shopping and in the car together. And I don't care what nobody got to say about whether or not our ancestors visit us and support us when we know we need it. I believe it. I believe it. I had to, in honor of my mama, child, and the way folk be, no backbone having jellyfish, toting two sides of a line. I thought I'd pull out the paper today because I've had a plenty of discussion about whether or not empathy could be learned or taught. And yes, empathy can be taught. It is not a trait, it is a skill that's learnable. But here's the challenge: anything that you learn slowly, people think ain't happening. Anything that happens slowly, people think ain't happening. When you look at what's occurring from a political landscape, and you start to see how um, what becomes socially acceptable versus what isn't, and how long that takes for that to happen, you start to see that societal change doesn't happen as quickly as we want, but it does happen, and so therefore people can change too. But the type of empathy that people think can't be learned is emotional empathy. So I'm gonna just draw a little heart here for y'all. This is emotional empathy, and they would be correct that it takes a little longer to learn emotional empathy. But if we're talking about the empathy that can be learned, that's in your head, and that's what I like to call mental empathy. And I hope y'all can see my little pictures here. But there is while emotional empathy is me feeling what another person feels, there's some challenges with me feeling what somebody else feels. You see, if I am feeling what you feel and what you feel is pain, I'm going to sometimes have a different goal than you would expect. You see, if I feel what you feel and you are in pain, my goal might have initially been to help alleviate your pain. But the moment I start to feel pain, don't ain't nobody trying to feel pain. So you can only engage in so much emotional empathy before you get tired and burnt out. Good morning, Dr. Martin. I appreciate you. And so often people who find themselves in the helping professions think clergy, think healthcare institutions, think education. Over the course of a day, you might experience 40, 50, 100 people in pain. And so if I have emotional empathy, which I'm indicating by a heart, the heart ain't got nothing to do with it, but you follow me. If I feel what you feel, then I want to relieve myself of the pain. So now my goal, see, my goal might have started out that I'm trying to help you. But the moment I start to feel pain, then my goal gonna change because I got to relieve my suffering. And that's why people burn out. That's why people can't do it over and over and over again. That's why I'm a proponent of the type of empathy that you can teach, which is mental empathy, indicated here by this little face, this little blue face. So if I got mental empathy and my goal is not to feel what you feel, but my goal is to understand you so that then I can help you, then I recognize that you over here with your pain and your suffering, I understand it. But in my mind, I'm thinking about what we call compassionate empathy, which is what can I do to help? And so then my goal remains the same, which is to help you. I don't need a boundary because I'm not feeling the pain you feel. Why am I talking about this? because people think these two types of empathy are correlated. If I care about you, then I understand you. If I understand you, then I care about you. And they're actually not connected at all. You see, our politicians understand us very well. And that does not necessarily mean that they care about us. That means they know what talking points to use in order to be able to manipulate us. It's helpful to have both of these. But if ultimately I want to be able to create a more compassionate society where people are moved to actually do something differently, you need to understand the challenges that people are going through. That is more sustainable because I'm not in pain when I'm understanding you. I'm using my mental energy in order to decide, using logic and reason, how to move forward. Both of these are types of empathy. They are marginally connected to each other. They're not really connected at all, not in any way. In fact, I could argue that one of the things that gets in the way when we have emotional empathy is thinking that because the last time I had cancer, I had certain feelings. And so then I start projecting my feelings onto you. And you might not be feeling the same way I feel at all about this thing. And so we have to be very careful when we start saying, one, that empathy can't be learned, but two, when we talk about empathy as if it's feeling what somebody else feels. When I wrote Spark the Heart, I did not ask my friend Ebony if I could mention her in the book. But she talks openly about her cancer diagnosis, and it was bladder cancer. And if you don't know, bladder cancer is not something that Black women tend to get. And my friend Ebony is Black. It's also something that not women tend to get. And my friend Ebony is a woman. And she talks openly on her social media channels about, her experience with bladder cancer. But when she got her bladder removed and she was getting it, and she had a fake bladder, that they can do some fantastic things with the human body that just mesmerized me. Her fake bladder was trying to kill her. And I write about this story in the book. And what was interesting about that is that when I went to see her, she had a fever. Um, she was swelling. She could barely get out of the chair. And my emotional empathy was, I could feel that she was in pain. That's helpful. I'm grieving with her because her physical body is in pain. And I imagine if that's my job, again, that's not sustainable over dozens or hundreds or thousands of people. But this is my friend. This is my friend from college. They call me Price. They call her Cash. We was together in engineering school all the time. But what was she mostly concerned about? She wasn't concerned about getting well. And while I'm sure that was working in the back of her mind, what we were talking about while I was there on my visit was how was her employer going to respond because she was almost out of long-term disability and she needed more time off. You see, I can draw these pictures all day long, and I vehemently believe that whoever was her leader at that time don't need to know none of this to know the sick people can't be at work. And I have spent the last month trying to convince leaders that sick people don't need to be at work. I had a client, and I'm going to try as best possible to make sure that I'm giving away zero identifying characteristics because it's not about who. We had an in-person session scheduled. Several people got COVID. They say to me, Nicole, can you do the session virtually and in person? First of all, I hate hybrid events. The people online either having a bad experience or the people in the room either having a bad experience. It is not a good experience for both groups. You know what? Let's just do a virtual session and an in-person session. That's just kind of how I am. Call me old, call me whatever. I'm almost 50, so maybe it's that I'm old. But my question was, are the people sick? The answer is yes. And I said, I have a philosophical, non-negotiable belief that sick people don't need to be at work. And they don't need to be at work in the bed on Zoom. And they don't need to be at work coming in here. If they ain't you need to know this about empathy in order to know the sick people don't need to be at work. And so I pushed. Like we moved the date until people ain't sick, man. Like that's what we need to do. If we need to all be together, just go with me, please. I want you to use all of your empathy, both cognitive and affective. Think about a time when you had a cold and your nose is stopped up, you got a fever, got a headache, maybe your throat sore, you got some aches. Are you trying to be laying in the bed with your laptop? No, that's common courtesy. Like, who raised y'all? Like, why do I gotta teach this to people? Do you need to understand? Do you need a whole book? Do you need a whole book? You don't need no whole book to know that. You don't need a whole book to know that. I learned of a woman who was she had gone through breast cancer, gone through all of her treatment. She's getting her reconstruction surgery. Now, here's what I know from my friends who have gotten reconstruction surgery. Here's what I know from my friends who have just gotten boob jobs. It hurts. Like you in physical pain. They got to stretch your skin to places it ain't been before. I don't know what it's like to have my skin stretched to make space for implants, but I know what it feels like to have my skin stretched in one of those devices when I do my mammogram every year. And I can tell you what, I ain't trying to be on no Zoom call while I got my boob smashed in the middle of that thing. And so, do I need to understand empathy in order to know that this person does not want to be? Okay, let's imagine that they are in pain. What do you think the doctor has given them to relieve their pain? This does not require empathy. They probably on pain meds. So if I'm on pain meds, I can't drive a car, but you want me to do this high level thinking in a meeting. This month, I lost that battle. I lost that one. She was still on that call. She was still, she was still on that call. And I listen, as a consultant, I know I'm not the decision maker, y'all. I know I'm not. But here's what I need you to know. When we make decisions like this, when we won't lean into effective empathy, trying to think about what another person feels, because I would argue that sometimes my friend Ebony, some people who have effective empathy where they feel what she feels, they come to her, they all crying, falling all apart. Now she got to console them. The goal, you ain't relieving the pain and suffering of her if she got to console you. So this ain't even helpful here. With her cancer diagnosis, what she's trying to heal, when she's telling the story. If you all falling apart, what's your goal in that moment? You trying to make her feel better? You trying to make her feel like we connected? I don't know, but I think if the cancer survivor is now consoling you, that you might be missing the mark. You look at this cognitive empathy, mental, like understanding. If you understand what somebody is going through, that they're on pain medications, like help me understand how you get to the, well, yes, now they should probably be in the room. The same thing happened this week. I was on the road, somebody not feeling good, they still there. Here's the problem with this, sugar. When you're a leader, you are signaling to everybody else that you don't care nothing about them. Do you need a book? Do you need a book? So when my mama come visit me this week, what I was really excited about, like I got this. This is my mama Mumu, y'all. It's falling all apart. If somebody know how to sew, I need them to put it back together. I put it on. I've been sleeping in it for the last couple of nights because I was just so excited that my mama came to visit me in my dream. And you know what? One of the things that my mama used to say is just like, you know what? Sometimes what we not fighting is hatefulness. What we fighting is just pure, unadulterated ignorance. Because think if we would just think about things, what does that do for everyone who's left? And so we start talking about how we're not empathizing on these massive things like healthcare reform, educational reform, criminal justice reform, warring in Israel. When we can't, with the person right next to us, try to understand what they might be going through so that we can make the next right decision. And I would argue that empathy, both effective and mental, were built for a world in which there was no way for me to know what was going on in Alabama, even until weeks later. There was no way for me to know what's going on in Nigeria. Ain't no way for me to know what's going on in Gaza, except for to read it in the newspaper, maybe. And if you go back far enough, wasn't no way for me to know about it at all. I was around the people who were like me. And so empathy was displayed to the people who were like me. And it's one of the reasons why I've introduced this concept of what I'm calling radical empathy, which I think I'm the empathy revolutionary here. That's what I'm calling myself. And so what does the empathy revolutionary need to do? See, radical empathy is your ability to take all of this empathy and then direct it towards people who ain't like you at all. People who don't have your shared experience. Because here's the danger when somebody not like you at all. Not only are you not empathetic towards them, because you see, my girlfriend, Ebony, works in an environment where there ain't a whole lot of Black women there. Not only are you not empathetic to them at all, you also tend to assign nefarious intent. Those people over there, when they do something, they are worse than we possibly could imagine, and we never think about them in any good ways possible. And so I just ask you, what does it look like when you've got the likes of a Tim Scott, who was saying things like, yeah, the United States does not have a racism problem, but in the same breath, don't call me an Uncle Tom. Couple things here. It has been evidence-based and proven, if you read just but one book, that if there's one thing about the United States of America is we have a racism problem. There is not a single institution in the United States of America that does not have disproportionality based on race, period. Not one. We have a racism problem. Number two, you gonna throw out a concept and you ain't even read the book. Because if you read Uncle Tom's Cabin, you would understand that Tom ain't the problem. Sambo was the problem. And Mr. Scott, when you can conflate and put those two things together, kind of Sambo to me. And I think sometimes we get to a point where we kind of think about even this radical empathy, and we look at the things we can see and consider them to be us. And I would say, I'm so glad Mr. Cameron got unseated, because one of the things that my mama always said, in addition to making sure that I was trying to use my mental empathy as well as my effective empathy, was all our skin folk ain't our kinfolk. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. We got plenty work to do.